One of the greatest evidences for a global flood is what we walk on all the time. Now, I gotta state up front, my primary reason for thinking the flood was global, I must confess my presuppositions. I'm a biblical creationist, so I go to the Bible, and the Bible plainly teaches the flood was global. Sorry, theologians, that you want to compromise on this. You're going to have issues with all sorts of what I'm about to say from a scientific perspective. So there's a lot of questions. Well, what about this? What about this? What about that? And you got all of these different things all over the place trying to say, oh, well, it must not have been global. Here. I'm a microbiologist. What? Microbiologist talking about the flood? Here goes. Just hold on a second with me here. The study of living things all over the world is called biogeography. So microbial biogeography is looking at the bacteria all over the world, where they are and where they live. In a gram of soil, there are so many bacteria. We're not even sure on the exact number. It's estimated that there is a literal ton of bacteria in an acre of soil. Just to give you an idea, the biomass on this planet is mostly bacteria that live in the soil. So when talking about bacteria in soil, the first thing you know I'm going to talk about is dinosaurs. What? Yeah. Okay, so according to where we look at and find all of the dinosaur bones, the fossils that are left over, we look on Pangea and we see that they started out in certain places, and then the continents divided, there's drifting, and so we find dinosaur bones in all of the different continents, but they originally started in one place. Okay, there's a great explanation for that from a biblical perspective, and it's the fact that the continent divided during the flood, and so everything was buried there on the continent, and then it moved over. Okay, so that helps explain the different ecosystems that we find for the dinosaurs and the floods that are all over the world. The bigger problem that I have as a microbiologist is that there's this big disconnect between the macroecology and the microecology. The disconnect is between all the stuff that you and I can see, like birds, fish, giraffes, platypus. Oh, platypus is so cool. There's a big disconnect between where we see all of those kinds of living organisms and where the little itty bitty, the wee beasties, as Tony van Leeuwenhoek said. The bacteria, huge disconnect, worlds apart. And so the other thing that's kind of worlds apart is our hymn book. What? I know, it's getting a little, just bear with me here. So in our hymn book, Christian, you realize you've been singing about the smell of rain for quite some time now? Yeah. Jesus, Jesus, the sweetest name I know. Like the fragrance after the rain. Why are we comparing the smell of rain to Jesus? What's interesting about rain, the interesting aspect is you look in Genesis 9:13, and we're given the rainbow as a token, the covenant between God and man, that God's not going to judge by water. So it rains, we see the rainbow, like the fragrance after the rain. Well, there's this guy that talked about the bacteria, going back on this. His last name is Bosbecking. And he's the father of microbial ecology today. And he said, alles is overal maar het milieu selecteert. Okay, if I butchered the Dutch, I'm sorry. It means everything is everywhere, but the environment selects. So what he said is if you take a gram of soil in Lynchburg, Virginia, where I teach at Liberty University, and you take that and you compare it to a gram of soil in Moscow, Russia, what you find is that if you were to represent them by an individual color, you'd see that you'd have one arrangement of the bacteria over here, and you'd look over in Lynchburg and you look over here in Russia and you'd say, oh, they're organized differently, but if you look closely, the organization's different of the exact same bacteria. And so you look in the scriptures in Genesis 7:19, and it says that the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. And yes, the word all means all, and high means high, and the whole heaven means everywhere. What happened during the flood was that the soils were broken up, the water was mixed, and the bacteria that's in the soil mixed evenly so that when it receded, it landed back down on the earth. And so we have everything everywhere. The evolutionist has no explanation outside of deep time. Now why am I talking about rain and bacteria? Well, the bacteria Streptomyces, who is described as having a wide biogeography by the Bergey's Manual of Systematics. It's like the Bible for us microbiologists. Bergey's manual says that Streptomyces has a wide biogeography. Even the Evolutionary Microbial Systematics Bible says these guys are everywhere. There's no denying it. They're famous because they produce antibiotics, which is great, a blessing, okay? But the cool thing is they are also responsible for the smell of rain. They produce a compound called geosmin, which combines in the air to form what's called petrichor, and that's what we smell. So it gets real dry outside, the ground gets cracked, the rain comes down, hits the Streptomyces in the soil, they release the geosmin, the air from the cold front carrying the rain carries the geosmin off in the distance, and what comes to you is geosmin, not the smell of rain. You can collect the rain in your own hands and you can smell it. It doesn't smell like anything except water. There's no explanation for it outside of the bacteria in the soil produce this. And have you ever noticed it smells like rain all over the world? That's living evidence there for you of trillions of living things inside the rock layers laid down by water all over the earth. Every step you take on the ground, on the soil, you are walking on evidence, living evidence of a global flood. So not only does it rain and you smell the evidence of the flood, but you get the added sight, the reminder of God's rainbow, his covenant between us. So Noah was real, there was a global flood. This helps explain, it explains the fossil record and the microbial biogeography. You know, Jesus believed it. You want to be a Christian? You should believe like Jesus does. And the whole point of this is it resembles the coming judgment, because God judged first time around with water. The second time won't be the same way. That's why we can smell the rain. That's why we see the rainbow. You know, Noah's flood is not a fairy tale. It's a historic narrative. How do you like that?